Space, the final frontier, and the newest setting for this year's Call of Duty game. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare continues the tradition of the recent Call of Duty games focusing on the ever-redundant future technology. However, and surprisingly may I add, this year's Call of Duty campaign is one of the best in the series and definitely the star of the game this year, especially over the multiplayer mode. The setup for the story isn't anything relatively innovative with the space setting. Humans are running out of resources on Earth, and so they have to race into space and colonize moons and planets. You know, the same old space setup that pretty much any other game has. During the colonization movement, you have this opposing team called the Settlement Defense Front, and they attack you, giving you a first-hand look at what their hostile group is capable of. You take on the role of Nick Reyes on the opposite team, which is the Special Combat Air Recon, who's better known as the Peaceful Scar Group. After a few action scenes with some spoilers, you're prompted to the lead position of the Jackal fighter jet, and tensions rise between the Special Combat Air Recon and the Settlement Defense Front. In addition to the ongoing struggle between the two groups, you also get some tension because of your new promotion between you and your right-hand woman, Nora Salter, who for the most part was always on par with you in terms of the ranking system until now. The character development between these two characters was something I really wasn't expecting to see, but I'm really happy to say it's some of the best writing for the Call of Duty series. Speaking of things I love about the campaign, there's your co-pilot Ethan, a robot soldier that represents pretty much the perfect utopian soldier, but with a sarcastic sense of humor that only your best friend can describe.
You know I got stage fright, right, sir?
You got feelings, Ethan?
I do, Lieutenant. I do. I carry the brain of a human farmer.
Holy shit, are you serious?
No, ma'am. Not at all.
He's also the soldier that introduces you into space combat sequences, something new for the series. They're pretty easy at first with some simple dogfight sequences, but slowly they get more challenging as the enemy AI gets smarter and you really have to put more effort into it. Many times during these fighting sequences I felt like I was playing a Star Wars game with only the sound effects and the giant Death Star in the background missing. It's a pretty nice change of pace for the gameplay and I really enjoyed it. Oh, and if you pick up Infinite Warfare on PS4 and happen to have a PlayStation VR lying around, you'll have the option to try out these space combat sequences in virtual reality. A nice touch for any of you PlayStation VR owners. Aside from the cool space sequences, you have your traditional on-foot first-person shooting sequences too. You're able to use really cool future warfare like seeking grenades that almost look like the aliens from the movie Aliens but in robot form. You can also use anti-gravity grenades which pretty much get groups of enemies to float in the air while you practice your aiming. And with what feels more like a theme now with the futuristic setting of some Call of Duty games, you're much more mobile now. You can run, wall run, slide, double jump. It pretty much feels like you're trying to be Titanfall 2 with the mobility, but not really hitting the nail just yet. This year's 5 to 6 hour campaign is definitely one of the best campaigns in the first person shooter this year, which for some reason happens to be a trend with the big AAA shooters this year, but I'm not complaining. Battlefield 1, Titanfall 2, and now Call of Duty Infinite Warfare all had really great campaigns this year and I'm really happy about it. Now what I do think could use some improvement is the multiplayer mode. It seems like every year the same complaints arise with the Call of Duty series, people complaining that the multiplayer is exactly the same as the previous year's Call of Duty, and usually I'd argue in favor of the developer adding at least one significant change to this year's multiplayer. I gotta say, it actually does feel like a carbon copy of the previous multiplayer modes, especially Advanced Warfare. You have the same playlist of game modes like the previous games, like Team Deathmatch and Kill Confirmed, but nothing new making use of the new tech and the new setting in space. You do have some new and pretty powerful unlockable weapons like the Eraser that pretty much kills anyone in a single shot, and then the Claw that's pretty much any weapon sprayer's dream. Seriously, a blind man could win a match as long as they had the Claw as a weapon. The progression system continues to be one of the best parts of the multiplayer mode, rewarding players that show great skill and dedication to playing the game for hours on end. The customization features for your loadouts are pretty great too, and I'd appreciate them more if the time it took to kill somebody wasn't so short that I would actually be able to notice the differences between my loadouts. There's a new system called Combat Rigs that's tailored to the certain types of playstyles among players like Stealth for example, but it's pretty much a carbon copy of the Specialist system in Black Ops 3. There's a new Zombies mode this year and that's definitely better than the traditional multiplayer. This one takes place in a futuristic theme park called Spaceland that puts you and your friends fighting for your lives. Strategy plays a much more important role this time around as it's not just about opening up the map as much as you can, but figuring out what the best route is and doing so for your team. Open up a new area of the map and suddenly the spawn points double for the zombies. It's a game of risk and reward and evaluating what your team's best choice of route is for surviving the night. There will be more maps in the future that are based on different movie settings, but as with all new content with the Call of Duty series, you'll have to buy the DLC in order to enjoy them. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare did a good job of introducing a new setting that allowed them to tell one of the best stories in the series in recent years, on par with the Modern Warfare series. My only real problem with the game is that it still heavily relies on futuristic tech, and that's becoming redundant in the last 3 years of the Call of Duty franchise. It's not that I hate the setting, because the campaign was great this year, and I know a lot of people are going to bring up the differences between World War I and Battlefield 1 and the space setting in Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, but what I hated with this year's game was the lack of innovation that the developers had with the multiplayer mode, especially with the new setting. If you can use the setting really well to your advantage when writing a great story for the campaign mode, I'm sure you can come up with something new for the multiplayer mode, especially because it's not just one developer making one Call of Duty game every single year, they cycle off between different years. If you want a Call of Duty for the multiplayer this year, which I expect many of you did, I'd say wait for a price drop or just skip it altogether this year. It doesn't really feel worth it at the moment, with the exception of a pretty good zombies mode, but I still don't think just zombies alone is worth $60. The campaign, on the other hand, is fantastic, and it's up there with the Modern Warfare series, as I mentioned before. However, I still don't think the $60 price tag is worth it, especially with a 5-hour campaign. I'd say wait for a price drop as well if you're just in it for the story, but if you're in it for the story and the zombies mode, then you might want to go ahead and give it a shot. And for any PC players out there, I'd like to mention this before you consider buying the game for Windows 10 or Steam. You won't be able to play with Steam users if you buy the game for Windows 10 or physically for Windows 10 and vice versa. This is because the Windows 10 version on PC runs on Xbox Live servers, while the Steam client version runs on Steam servers. This essentially cuts the already small PC player base of Call of Duty in half. This is definitely something worth noting if you're even considering buying the game on PC, because depending on where you buy it, whether it's on Steam or Windows 10, you might not have that large install base online to play anything else but Team Deathmatch. Thank you all very much for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, smack that like button and share with your friends on Facebook and Twitter. It helps spread the word of my channel, and I really do appreciate it. And as always, whether you agree or disagree with my opinion on this particular game, let me know in the comment section below. I'd like to discuss our differentiating or agreeing opinions with each other. And while you're waiting for my next video, you can check out one of my most recent reviews. I did a lot of reviews on first-person shooters this fall, so besides Call of Duty, you can check out my review of Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1. And whether you're on the computer or mobile, you can actually click on the thumbnails and go watch them. That's a new feature here on YouTube. As always, thank you all very much for watching the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.